Hello and welcome to this session entitled How Maxa Manages Their Snowflake Native App Release Cycle. I'm excited to be with you here today, and I've got a special guest who's going to talk through how Maxa built a native application and manages the release cycle of that application to their consumers. My name is Kevin McGinley. I'm the head of Snowcat at Snowflake, and I'm joined here today by Frederic Langlais from Maxa. Fred, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Kevin. My name is Frederic Langlais. I lead platform solutions at Maxa. Nice to be here.
Awesome. So what's this session going to go through? Well, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Fred here in a moment so he can walk you through who is Maxa, what they're all about, and what they're thinking about from a native apps perspective with the apps that they're building. Then I'll walk you through how the Snowflake Native App Framework works from a release management perspective. We're not going to dive into the whole framework and all of its inner workings. We're going to focus on how developers like you can release your app to your consumers. And then I'll turn it over to Fred, who's going to walk through a demonstration of their native application and talk about, how they handle that release management, walk through an actual upgrade of an application and how that pushes out to consumers. So with that, Fred, let me turn it over to you and you can tell us all about Maxa.
So we're Maxa. We are an enterprise-grade startup based in Canada, and we are the 2023 Snowflake Startup Challenge winners. So what do we do at Maxa? We built a financial data platform on top of Snowflake. We wanted to reinvent the way that ERP insights are made and consumed by CFOs, the C-suite, and their teams. So the thing we're trying to solve for is really what we call the ETL challenge. So ETL has been around for decades and hasn't evolved much. I'm sure you're familiar with the term extract, transform, and load. So extracting data from source system, commoditize, loading data into Snowflake, very easy. But the problem, in our opinion, is with the transform, because that does not bring real value to the business. So, of course, we're fans of ELT, just like Snowflake, but we're not only transforming data, we're also translating data into clear business semantics with all the metrics and KPIs already available, pre-crunch and pre-aggregated inside of the data model for business users to be able to consume directly. If you would take any ERP system on the market, such as SAP, what you would find under the hood is what you see on the left. So hundreds, if not thousands of tables into a very cryptic, convoluted, very difficult to use and understand data model for both data practitioners and business people. With Maxa, once we run our translation engine, you're going to get most often a single table or a handful of tables. And again, with all these metrics and KPIs directly available for business users to use. So let's look at the architecture that we have in more details. You can think of Maxa as three parts: Maxa Connect, Maxa Translate, and Maxa Perform. Our crown jewel is Maxa Translate. Let's start with Maxa Connect. Maxa Connect will allow customers to move the raw data into Snowflake, where we can connect to any system, whether on-prem or in the cloud. So think of ERPs, APIs, databases, Excel spreadsheets, and whatnot. Once that raw data has been moved into Snowflake, then we're going to run our translation engine on top, which will create our universal data model that we call Muse, which stands for Maxa Universal Schema for the Enterprise. All the customer system will be combined as one with clear semantics. Last but not least, our module Maxa Perform is a structured set of Lego blocks for analytics that will address use cases across mostly two dominant themes: finance and ops, and also supply chain. Some examples would be P&L roll-up and drill down, work order profitability, each one a very popular use case and pinpoints. We'll be able to add Lego blocks as we see common use cases that we do not address. And this is easy to do at Maxa because we are freed ourselves from the complexity of all these underlying data systems. We'll provide native visualizations to customers by the mean of Streamlit, and we'll offer live analytics dashboard and a soon-to-come self-serve chat interface. Everything that you see here will be packaged as a native app and delivered to the customer. And one thing that we really like about the native app framework is the way that we can manage versions and patches. So Kevin, can you tell us a little bit more about how this works?
Thanks, Fred. I can't wait to see your native apps come to the Snowflake Marketplace. It's going to be a great addition for all Snowflake customers who need to see their ERP data in a more insightful way. But like you said, let's drill into what is the Native App Framework release overview. So how do you do releases and manage releases within the Snowflake Native App Framework? So let's baseline everyone with a simple workflow. So we'll start with a provider like Maxa. They're going to have their own Snowflake accounts, and they're going to create what's called an application package. Now, I'll dive into a little bit more of what this application package is in a moment, but for the most part, you can think of this as the totality of the application from the provider's point of view. This could also include shared data, as I've shown here in the diagram. And what you're going to do with this application package is you're going to publish it to the Snowflake Marketplace. Now, you can do this in one of two ways. The first way is through a public listing. In a public listing, your application is going to be available to all Snowflake customers within the clouds and regions that you put your application on the Snowflake Marketplace. For a private listing, only those customers that you designate within the listing can see that private listing in their Snowflake Marketplace. So you have complete control over whether you have a public application or whether you're just going to target specific Snowflake customers or specifically customers of yours. From there, when the consumer goes to get that application from the marketplace, it's actually going to install the application within their account. And this is going to create a running version of the application. So in the provider side, we have the application package. That's all the components that make up the application. But when the consumer gets the application from the marketplace, it's doing an install and creating a running application. And that running application might involve accessing data in the consumer's account, which the provider can access or ask for privileges from the consumer for that local data. So that's the basic workflow. So now let's talk about what it's like to release your app for the first time. So we're going to go ahead and create version 1.0 of an application. And this is going to be the code and the manifest that define this version 1 patch 0. And what you're going to do within the application package is create that version, and you can name it whatever you want. I'm calling it V1 here. And we're going to automatically create patch 0 for you when you create that first initial version. From there, you're going to update something called a release directive that says, I want all consumers to install version 1 patch 0 when they get the app from the marketplace. So when that consumer goes out and installs their account, they're going to install version 1 patch 0. And we, Snowflake, are going to make sure that happens based on what you put in your release directive. Okay, so this is great, but now let's say you want to enhance your application. Maybe you have to put a fix out there to change something, change the behavior of your application. Let's talk about doing a patch. So in the same way within your application package, you're now going to have a separate code and manifest that defines what patch 1 is. And within version 1, you're going to add a patch to that existing version. We will auto increment that patch number for you to patch 1. And you'll update your release directive to say, hey, Snowflake, I want all consumers to be on version 1 patch 1 now. And what Snowflake will do is we'll go examine all of the consumers who are running your application and automatically upgrade them to version 1 patch 1, usually within roughly an hour's time frame. It's not immediate, but we do it within a pretty short period of time. Great. So now you've got your first sort of patch out there for your application. Now you want to create a whole new version, a major enhancement, and you're going to create version 2. So when you create version 2, again, you're going to go through the same process of bundling up your code and manifests that define version 2, and you're going to add a new version to the application package. We'll automatically create that patch 0 for you, and you're going to update your release directive. Now, I know what some of you are thinking right now. What if I want to have certain consumers stay on version 1 patch 1, but I want to have new customers go to the next major release of version 2 patch 0? Well, fortunately, the release directive supports that. So you can put exceptions within your release directive that says your consumer A is going to stay on version 1 patch 1, where all new customers like consumer B who install the application from the marketplace are going to install version 2 patch 0 instead. So we've created this robust capability within the native app framework for you to manage release cycles, handle exceptions, move customers through versions, and make sure all of those upgrades get pushed out to customers, all with Snowflake helping you behind the scenes. So Fred, let me turn it over to you now so you can actually show us this in action, and you're going to actually walk us through a live Maxa app and make an upgrade to that application, which I'm excited to see.
All right, thanks, Kevin. So before we look at the demo, let's maybe look at the architecture to understand a bit better what we're going to see. So we're going to take a real life use case. This is our customer Heartprint. We're going to use, of course, a fully anonymized data set. So they are a company that does custom design and prints on aluminum cans, just like the one that you see on the top right. And just like many businesses out there, they have data siloed across a number of systems. So they came to Maxa in the hope that we could help them bring this all at the same place and be able to create insights for their executive. So let's look at what they have. They have Salesforce as a CRM. They have a custom-made orders portal backed by a MySQL database. And then they are migrating their accounting from Xero to NetSuite, which means that the historical data is in Xero, and then the new data is in NetSuite. So the first step for us was to bring all that raw data into Snowflake. We did so by using custom connectors. We're now able to create connectors in Snowflake by using the Snowflake Native SDK for connectors. So we have connectors for all the sources that they have. All that data flows into Snowflake. And this is where we're going to start to translate that data like I explained at the beginning of the presentation. So Maxa Translate and Perform are going to be installed in the customer's environment as native apps. This native app will do that transformation up to the point that we're going to be able to deliver data as an asset to the customer. Of course, the customer could decide to use these assets directly by using SQL or by using the Streamlit app, which is a UI that's going to be used by their executive. All right, so that's the demo flow. Now we're going to see exactly the change that we're going to perform. To do this, we're going to look at what the application looks like at the moment. So what you're seeing now is the consumer view. So this is where the customer would be able to see all the native apps that are installed. We have, in fact, 5 native apps. We have 4 native connectors, like I mentioned, for each of the sources that the customer has. And then we have the main application. So before we go into the main application, which is the one that we want to change, let's maybe take a quick look at what the connector looks like. So the connector is a native app, just like the other ones. It comes with a default UI that allows the customer to do some configuration steps if they want, for example, to change the sources and be able to sync more data if they want to. So now let's take a look at the main application that we call Maxa for Beer. So we use code names for our customers for confidentiality purposes. So I'm going to refer now as the customer as Beer. So once the app is loaded, you're going to see what the executive would be able to look at. Before, they were using a lot of Google spreadsheets to be able to take a lot of their business decisions. So now they have live analytics directly on their data, and they're able to look, in this case, at sales volume analysis in a very different way, look at their KPIs, look at trends. And this is a live application, of course, in which case they're able to filter by whatever they want and look at the data either in graph view or in table view. So the change that we've been asked to introduce in this case is to provide the customer with multiple dashboards. So this is a single view. The customer wants to have another one. So what we should expect to see here is basically a drop-down list that will allow the customer to go from one dashboard to the other. So my job today for the demo, I'm the person that's going to be responsible to put this change into production. So we use Git, just like many companies, we use Git as version control. So I assume at this point that the developers have done all their changes. These changes have been committed to Git. So what I've done is that I pulled the latest version of the application on my laptop. And now my job, my responsibility is now to put this into production. So before we actually look at the change, I want just to take a minute to explain what the structure of a native app looks like. So what you should expect in terms of asset. So of course, a native app has two sides. One of them is the UI, the Streamlit UI, like I showed, and then all the data engineering that we're doing, the transformation, will be, SQL code, Snowpark code, and whatnot. So of course, there's a lot of assets that you're going to see that have to do with Streamlit. So there's images like you see on the left-hand side, a bunch of components to describe the way that we're going to define our plots, or sections, sidebars, and whatnot. Then there's everything that has to do with the data component. So when we do that data transformation behind the scenes, I'm going to show you a glimpse of what that code looks like. So you'll most likely recognize Snowpark code. So for example, the one that I'm showing you now will help us to initiate a database connection, right? A connection to Snowflake. And then we have a bunch of other assets here, our pages. So everything is basically defined. So this is more something custom that you're gonna that you're gonna see for a custom app. But there's a few things that you're gonna see with all applications. And the first one, of course, is the manifest. The manifest will define the setup script, will define the default Streamlit UI, and along with some configuration such as log level and whatnot. Then we're gonna have a setup script. So the setup script will allow you to define the security constructs around your application. This is a demo today, so we're gonna go very simple with a single role that we're gonna call app public. But of course, this is where you would introduce your governance and maybe have multiple roles that would be enabled to do different things in the application. But so in this case, we're just going to define a single role that we're going to call app public. We're going to create the schemas that we need to run the application. These schemas are going to be versioned or not, and then we're going to grant usage on these assets to our role. We're going to define what our main Streamlit file is, as you see here on line number 8. We're going to look at that app.py script in just a minute, and this is where we're going to introduce our change, and then continue with granting usage onto these assets. In order to upload all the assets that we need for a new version or a new patch, which we're going to introduce in a minute, we're going to need a secondary script. And as I mentioned, we're doing already our version control inside of Git. What you're seeing here is a way to upload all the assets, so everything that composes the application, all these assets onto a stage. So in order to do this, I need to create a database and a schema, and then a stage, in which case we're going to put, right? Put is just like an SFTP of upload that we're going to use NoSQL to be able to move these files that are on my laptop right now onto Snowflake. So again, we're not trying to reproduce the version control here, which means that you're going to see that my put have overwrite equals true, because this is a temporary place, transient place where I'm only going to upload the assets that I need. I'm not looking at doing version control at this point. So now let's look at the change that we want to introduce. So remember, our application does not have a page selector. So we're going to introduce on the left-hand side in the menu a page selector. So, to make things simple, we commented out the version 1, which only allows to see one dashboard. And then the version 2 will allow us basically to have the page selector visible and then go from one dashboard to the other. So as the person responsible to put this into production, I confirm that, I see that the code change is visible. So now I'm really ready to deploy it onto Snowflake. So I'm going to call my shell script, deploy native app. I'm going to run this. This will authenticate to Snowflake. Just going to take a minute. I'm going to say yes. Then we're just going to wait until this is completed. Here we go. So all the assets, again, all the assets that compose that new release that I want to deploy for the customer have been packaged together, and now they're on Snowflake. So now I'm ready to go on the provider side, and I need to do a few things to make this visible to the customer. So again, like Evan mentioned, working with versions, you're only allowed to have 2 versions. So this can be, it could be limiting to some extent. So we're probably going to use versions for major releases only moving forward, something like this. We prefer to work with patches. So for patches, you can have as many patches as you want. So as the application provider, what we need to do is to create basically a new patch for everything that we uploaded right now. The first thing we need to do is to create the application package if it does not exist. So of course, the application package will exist at this point. Then we need to alter the application package, and then we're going to create, or add the patch for the version that we're in. Just going back quickly on the app side, I want to point out where we are at the moment, right? So my Maxa for beer right now sits at version 0.1. Again, you have full control over the way that you can name your version. You can use, a letter or not, depending on what you want to do. And then what you have on the right side of the last dot is the patch number. So right now we are at patch 15. We're going to introduce a new patch with what I'm doing right now. So my alter application has been done, and I need to look at the status because it contains important information that is important for the next step. So I see now that my patch number that's been created is 16. I'm going to copy this patch number, and then I'm going to put it in the last statement to update what is called my release directive. So the release directive will set basically the default version in terms of version and patch number for all customers moving forward that will install the application, as well as the consumers that have the application at the moment. So I'm going to run this and set my release directive to patch 16. In real life, at this point, I could not do anything. And like Kevin mentioned, there's a background process that will eventually, after a few minutes, upgrade my consumer to the latest past version. But of course, this is a demo, so we're going to want to accelerate things a little bit. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go on the consumer end, and then we're going to force upgrade the application to that latest patch version. So I'm going to go back to worksheets. I'm going to run a show application just to confirm where I am right now, right? So I am at version 0.1 and at patch 15. So what I'm going to do is run this statement that says alter application upgrade. And this will force upgrade my application to the latest version. So this will take anywhere between 15, 30 seconds, maybe up to a minute. So what I like to do is go back to the applications, the list of applications, and do a few refreshes. Right? So it was pretty quick this time. So I see now that my version is at patch 16, which is what I want, right? So just to confirm, I'm going to go back on my worksheet on the consumer end, right? I confirm that my application has been upgraded, which is great. And as my job is to deploy this change, I'm going to go back to the application and just confirm that I can see my change. So I can tell the customer that everything has been done properly. So we're going to wait until the main UI loads up, which should be pretty quick. And then I confirm now that I see my dashboard selector, right? That was not there before. And now I'm able to go from one dashboard to the other, which we're going to do right now. I'm going to go into my customer acquisition analysis dashboard. Then I'm just going to scroll down a little bit, just to confirm that everything is okay. Everything looks fine so far. But oops, well, I see here there's an unexpected bug. I see that there's a problem with the release that was actually published. So what I need to do is I need to roll back this version because I don't want my customer to be impacted. So do I need to redo everything that I've showed you before? The good news is that I can roll back in a much easier way than when I'm actually creating a new version. So what I need to do is go back on the provider end, and I'm going to set my release directive, and then I'm just going to lower the patch number. So I'm at patch 16 right now. I'm simply going to change this to patch 15. And what's great is that Snowflake retains basically the patch that was there before. So all the assets are still in Snowflake. Once I set my release directive, again, I could stop doing anything and that change would propagate. So the application would be basically automatically downgraded. But what I'm going to do, of course, is we're going to go back to our worksheet here and we're going to force downgrade, right, the application. So I'm going to run the show application just to confirm one more time. We are still at patch 16. I'm going to run now this application upgrade, which will, effectively will downgrade if you want my application. While this is running, I want to show you quickly one other feature that we're using, as I mentioned, in the architecture behind the scenes, which is dynamic tables. This is the way that we're doing our transformation, right? Our translation engine is based on this. So one thing that's really neat for customers is that it allows them to look at the lineage, right? So we're going through multiple steps in that translation process, and customers can, right, easily see what are the source table that they have in their systems and all the transformation that we're doing, so they can easily understand, the way that we're calculating these insights until the final steps, which is the MERT that they can consume. So our upgrade slash downgrade is probably good at this point, right? So like we confirm that we're at patch back at patch 15, which is what we want. We're going to do one more check in the application just to make sure that we're in a good place for the customer. I refresh, I see that my version number 15, patch 15 is now the right one. I'm going to do one last check just to confirm that the change that we introduced before that had a bug is not visible anymore. So that's going to take just one minute. There we go. And I now see that my page selector has disappeared. So now I can go back to my developers, and then we can discuss, about fixing this problem before we introduce that change one more time into the application. So that's it for our demo. I hope that you enjoyed learning a little bit more about Maxa, what we do in Maxa, and the way that we're managing versions and patches. So Kevin, back to you for last words.
No, that was fantastic, Fred. Great demo. So hopefully everybody learned today what the Native App Framework release directive is like and how that can help you manage your versions and patches in Snowflake, and also hopefully learn from an actual native app developer what their sort of use case is all about and how they're approaching building native apps, and got to see a fantastic, very detailed demo around how you can do this in your environment. So thanks so much, Fred, for going through this demo and putting all this hard work into this presentation.
Thanks, Kevin.